Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Supervision Matters podcast with Rita Sever, a leadership coach, HR consultant, and author of Supervision Matters and Leading for Justice. So welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about inclusion and belonging in the workplace. This is something really important, especially I think for leadership and HR to be aware if, people are not being kind of folded into, if I say the work family, I'm going to get in trouble from Rita. So I might as well start there. If you listen to last month's episode, she talked about you don't go around saying your family now. So I just make that critical error, Rita. Welcome back. How are you?
Thank you, Lisa. I'm good. It's good to be here and good to talk about the importance of seeing all your employees and bringing them into not the family, but the team.
Team. Yes, that's last month was on teamwork, but you see how that just,
Yeah.
you're so used to it that, that's kind of a, whew.
Right.
We've got to think about every little thing that is said and done is so important in a
Yes.
workplace, right? Especially coming from the leadership and from HR.
Absolutely.
So tell us about inclusion. We're talking a little bit different than the DEI inclusion stuff here today, but right now we're really going to be looking at mostly about inclusion that, people are part of the meetings. They aren't off in a corner somewhere, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I want to just start by talking about some of the studies that have shown the value when people feel engaged and included, because it's really striking. When people feel engaged at work, or when they feel included, they're 28% more likely to feel engaged with their work. They're 43% more committed to the organization, so it buys loyalty and retention. They're more likely to recommend other people to come to the workplace to work there, and they plan to stay with the company 3 times longer than people who don't feel included. So the values of inclusion are really strong. And in terms of the organizations that have a sense of community and inclusion are 6 times more likely to anticipate changes and be ready for them, what's coming down the road, and they're 8 times more likely to be successful. So this concept of building community, I think community is another good word for inclusion.
I love that word.
That people feel like I think of the song from Cheers, where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came. That's what we're talking about, that people feel a part of something at work. They don't feel isolated. They don't feel left out. And in a larger way, in the workplace, a sense of community and inclusion brings more innovation, more solidarity, more successful teamwork, higher retention again. And this is another interesting thing, that if employees feel more connected, so will your customers.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that helps on customer service level.
Absolutely.
So that saves money. You talk about retention. Retention is it's so vital that you have the right people, that you work with them, nurture and develop things together as a team, like you're saying, in a community. But if you are losing employees one after the other, that is expensive, because it's expensive. It's expensive to get a client. It's expensive to get a good employee. Those two.
Absolutely. It's expensive in terms of the cost of rehiring, filling the position. It's also expensive in terms of what you lose from institutional knowledge when people walk out the door, and their learning and their skills. So it's very expensive all the way around.
Yeah, because you send people to training somewhere.
Right.
It's expensive. There's insurance. There's all these things that happen. And even the time to get people used to what's going on in the workplace.
Right.
Get them situated, maybe even trained on site. I mean, all of that.
All of it. Yeah. So retention is huge.
So you want to keep retention of clients and staff, those two.
Yeah,
so if the staff are happy, clients will be happy. So
it does spill over. Yeah. And that, for my field of nonprofits, instead of customers, it would be clients. So yeah, it's important all the way around. Whoever you're doing business with, the value of community spills over.
Okay, so there's the actual culture. You want to make sure that when you have a meeting, you want to see that this person is, not just sitting with their phone. Because it could be they're not included because they've kind of not stepped into the fold, right?
It could be, or, I've seen places where there's a divide between new employees and more
Oh, yeah.
long-term employees, and that's divisive. Um, you know, People who are neurodivergent often feel excluded because they don't see the world necessarily the same way. They're perfectly capable and they're, interested. They're strong members of the team, but they may not get what they need in terms of how they can do their best work. And that's true. I also think of I'm an introvert. I'm sure I've talked about that on other podcasts. And if you don't have things in place to help introverts feel comfortable and safe, they're not going to be part of the team in terms of meeting participation because it doesn't feel safe. So, building a safe environment and a culture that's supportive for everyone, that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about inclusion and building community.
I think that's so important because, when you go into like in a meeting or something, there's that, oh, everyone's talking or people, there's these clicks that happen
Absolutely.
naturally, the
Yeah.
clicks. And that is something that can be devastating to culture, right?
Absolutely. It is
It,
very divisive, and by definition, it excludes people from being part of the in-group. So paying attention to inclusion is about building a community for your particular workplace that says you're welcome here.
Mhm,
Everyone is welcome, and we want you to be a part of this team. And if you
mhm.
don't feel like you can do that, let's talk about it. What do you need?
And it goes, I was thinking about this too, like when you go into like the cafe room or whatever the coffee area, right? And if everybody had their own mug kind of thing. It's like, oh, here's your mug. Everybody has a mug with their name on or whatever. And if you break it, well, that's bad juju. But but you know what I mean? It's like there's certain things you can do, but also in meetings is that like everybody has to answer the question or something, right? Is that
Or
correct?
at least have a chance to, maybe people can pass if they don't have anything to say at the moment, but people don't just talk over each other and you don't have a chance to talk. So, yeah, that you give a place for everybody to have a chance to weigh in on whatever the topic is. And you give them, excuse me, you give people the agenda the day before. So those
Mm,
of us who are more introverted can look at it and be prepared instead of in the moment saying, "So what do you think you want to suggest for the next quarter? What's our campaign going to be or whatever?" And I would be like a deer in the headlight, like what? But if I know ahead of time, I can come prepared with my ideas.
oh, I'm like that too because I want to have a big picture. I don't like it when you know, in correspondence, even it's like one question, one question, one question, but they're not tying together in a big picture. It gets you all flustered because you're not actually answering anything that you mean to. You know what
Right.
I mean? You're not
Absolutely.
prepared because even people that can think on their feet real quick, are they really sitting and taking in the perspective of everything?
And that's really how you get to those assets of strong teamwork and innovation is by hearing every voice and having a multiple of opinions and ideas before you make a decision. Because if you're just in a group culture where everybody is supposed to think the same way, that's sort of goes faster. People make decisions faster that way, but they don't last
Okay.
because you have to weigh all the options. So the safer people feel to weigh in and to, be the one who says, but I think there's an elephant in the room we're not talking about. That's a value to the team. And you
Mm.
want the diversity of opinions and experiences so that you can be the best team you can be.
So, Rita, how do leaders and the HR folks in an organization or a company realize that, hey, see those signals of someone kind of being excluded and not included in the culture?
Right. So there are several ways. Some are the obvious ways that you were mentioning. If someone is sitting by themselves all the time or not engaged in a meeting, or they're in a small group but they never talk and they're not invited to talk, those are all signs that something's going on. But before that, there's policies and practices to put in place ahead of time to prevent that exclusion. And this starts from when you hire someone and you bring them on board. You let them know that we value community and inclusion in this organization. And I want you to know that if you ever feel like you're being bullied or harassed or you're unsafe in any way, this is who you should talk to. And if you need to, there's a conflict resolution policy that we will support you to deal with it, or we'll take care of it for you if that's necessary. So those are really important so that people
Mm.
know that they're not only allowed to voice their concerns, they're encouraged to. And I'm thinking also there's an episode we did probably a year ago on hidden rules.
Oh yeah,
And if
that's
you
one that's
listen to
like
that one again, when you hear things like, well, they should have known that, or I shouldn't have to tell them that, those people who are saying that are probably
creating.
excluding people. Yeah,
That's creating a bad culture. So it's something where does HR and leadership communicate with, employees saying, hey, we're an inclusive community here. You have to speak like that and say, we welcome everyone. And, it's like if there's any bias, whether discrimination is not, well, it's not accepted for anyone,
right.
that kind of thing, say there will be no this, that, the other. And that really goes with those handbooks and all
Right.
of that kind of stuff. But it's important to maintain that because it keeps it at the
Absolutely.
forefront. So like if someone's having a hard time in maybe bullying or something and it comes back up in a meeting like every week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Yeah.
that gives you this reminder of the company is taking that seriously so you don't hide it so much.
That's critical because if you have it in a handbook, but it happens every week at a meeting and nobody does anything, then that person's gonna leave. That's where the
Mm.
high turnover comes in if they don't feel safe and included.
Okay.
So it's important to act and follow up on the policies because a lot of businesses have it in their policy, but you wouldn't know.
Mm.
It's just in writing, not in action. So HR and leadership has to pay attention. And the other way that I think is important, especially for HR, is to step back and look at who leaves like within the first year or two. What is the pattern of who
Uh,
leaves? Because that exit interviews are important there to ask real probing questions about what's happening, why are you leaving? But also the demographics tell you something that,
mm.
if you like, again, my background is in nonprofits. And if a nonprofit did a demographic study, they might find out that, we are 90% women. And every time we hire a man, they leave within a year. Something's going on there. So,
Okay.
that's an example where it's worth a conversation and a reflection about why aren't they staying?
Yeah, if it's all girly, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that can happen, gosh, so easily and not done to hurt anybody
right. No,
or to
just
make them
again,
feel
the
uncomfortable.
culture is not going out of their way to welcome someone.
Mm.
And again, that, I mentioned before the divisiveness of having an old staff or senior staff clique that doesn't welcome new people. That's the same kind of dynamic where that's going to lead to turnover. So those are just two examples, but it can be along any kind of diversity area, introverts again or whatever.
Mm. And I want to say, you were talking about those hidden rules, and that episode that is linked in the episode notes for everyone to go to. So it really gets into having conversations, right? And again, it's the meetings that we need to those meetings, and
Meetings are
yeah.
really critically important, but so is the individual supervision. Because if there's one supervisor who, is welcoming and supportive, but there's another supervisor that basically, probably not directly in these words, but if their actions say, you're just a peg in the hole, a round peg in a round hole, and you got to fit in. And if you don't, then I don't want you on my team. They may not say that, but that's what their actions say.
Mm,
So it's at that level too that some of this happens.
mm. You have to be careful with that too, because this can end up in lawsuits down the road.
Absolutely. It could.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think more often this is the area where it's the difference between, again, more subtle things like turnover and retention and innovation and going the extra mile together because you're a cohesive team rather than being disjointed. And maybe you get the work done, but it's not fun. People don't feel engaged. They can't
Hmm.
wait to go home. And yes, in extreme cases, it can end up in a lawsuit. But I, I think there's that if you're just afraid of the lawsuits, you could still be pushing a lot of good people out who could really bring a lot of good assets to your team.
Exactly. That's the thing. I mean, and it's getting weird now too with AI, and now that's getting thrown out in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Companies are now like, wait, we spent overspent on AI and we kicked people out, and we that is extreme stuff. And balance is really what we're talking about here, I think, because you can't have a community if you don't accept like different walks of life, different colors, different people,
Right.
different
Yeah.
genders, different any of that, right?
Yeah. If
So
you have a monochromatic
that's
company
not a
where
community.
everybody looks the same, you may again get the work done, but it's not going to be innovative. It's not going to be
Mm-mm,
fun. It's not going to be doing the work that you need to do to really be successful. To
mm.
be successful, you want to have a lot of different kinds of people who make the team stronger.
Yeah, and it is about teamwork. If you look at sports, which we talked about in the last episode too, sports, like someone could be, this is the person who can get the goal. We just had the World Cup, might as well
Right.
go there. This is the dude who knows how to do it. And everybody sets him up to do that goal or her up, right?
Right.
And so that all the odds are in their favor as best they can be, and that they have them as a back, that someone's going to back up if the ball goes this way, we're going to get it instead of the other
Right.
team. That is exactly what we're talking about, and I think that's part of why we like to watch sports, because
Right.
how are your tactics, how is your teamwork, because there's no way one person is going to run the team, and if they are, you're in trouble. You
Right.
can't, because you need to be able to have someone else step in your shoes, and it doesn't work if you don't have a team.
Yeah. Or if, using the soccer analogy again, if everybody is a kicker,
Yeah, that's not going to
that's
happen.
not going to work. You need defenders. You need people who can respond. You need different skills. That's the
Did
most
you watch the
obvious.
World?
I watch bits of it. Yes.
Okay, I had to
It's
ask.
quite
Yeah,
exciting. Yeah.
it is, because it is like, how does a team work?
Yeah.
And even if a team
Absolutely.
fails together, there is such a like, hey, we all did our best,
Yeah. The
or
camaraderie.
immediately like, man, I messed up on this. And if you have that kind of open floor to take the wins and the losses together and all take ownership of what, most times if you did the bad pick, right?
Right.
Your team, if you have been a team player and kind,
Right.
supportive, people are going to go, that sucks, but we still know you really tried,
Right.
because you don't want to let
Exactly.
your teammates down, and that's going to really be what spurs you to move forward, is your team, more than actually
Yeah.
the work half of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and without it, again, you end up with things where, okay, maybe this person's a great salesperson, but they stab people in the back to steal their clients or whatever.
Hmm.
That's
Oh
not
yeah.
what you want happening in a business or an
No, and that sucks.
organization.
Going to work when that kind of stuff makes you not feel good about going to work. And
Absolutely.
sometimes you could be going through hell at home. You don't know, like someone's
Right.
a caregiver or something, whatever, right? And you walk into work and it's a wonderful, supportive atmosphere. It kind of goes like, this is my other family here.
Uh-oh, you did it again.
Oh my gosh, and I never talked as much about that like that since then. But it's kind of my other,
Yeah,
shoe
it's my
here,
other safe place. Yeah,
It's kind
community.
of, I think positive culture the ripple effect of it is bigger than what we know in front of us
Right,
all the time. You know,
absolutely.
that one little thing can change anyone's day. And
Yep,
do you want to be the person being mean in the line at the grocery store? Like,
I
get off
hope
the
not.
self checkout. You don't know
Yeah,
what you're doing.
right.
Do you want to be one of those? And then, by the way, when you want to get out in traffic and make that right turn, do you want someone to actually give you that opportunity? I feel
Absolutely.
that all of what we're talking about today, that inclusivity works in every part in life, and it's up to us to make those positive moves.
Yeah, to help each other, support each other,
Mhm.
welcome each other, all of that. That's
I
how
do
we
let the
build
drivers
community.
in,
Yeah, I do
but
most
that's
of
the
the
point.
time.
Yeah, well, I don't like the road rage because I see weird things, from
Yeah,
that. But yeah, I think this kind of culture goes a long way. It's got to be fun, especially if
absolutely.
you're going through change. That's the thing. When things are going really well, I think you have to build your company. And when things go bad, that shows you what's working and what's not really quickly.
Yes, and it may not always be fun, but if you can build the community during, as you're saying, during the times when
Mm,
there aren't crises, then that community and connection will see you through the hard times, and you'll still have the support together
mhm.
that you need to get through the hard times. Absolutely.
Yeah. That energy is just, amazing. It really is
Yeah.
when things work like that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Rita. Always good. I tell everyone to go to supervisionmatters.com. That is Rita's website, but also sign up for her newsletter that comes out as well. It's always good. She's also up on LinkedIn is a good place to connect with Rita. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Always a pleasure.
That was fun. Let's go play football. Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Supervision Matters podcast with Rita Sever. Keep up with Rita at supervisionmatters.com and listen to new episodes every third Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on bigblendradio.com.